Hi, and welcome back to the next session. So, we have seen about ethical hacking in the last session. We saw about Linux operating system, Linux environment, though there is a lot more to be covered in ethical hacking in Linux and all. Um, the next thing that we have to discuss is about testing standards. So in the first session we have already discussed about the cybersecurity standards and all, like we had ISO 27001, PCI DSS, right? So if you remember, so if you don't remember, please do make sure that you have understood about the terms and you do remember it, because that is very important. Okay, and you cannot be missing that out. All right, so there are different testing standards. These are not the cybersecurity standards, these are cybersecurity testing standards. Like we have OWASP testing guide, OWASP mobile testing guide. So OWASP stands for Open Source Web Application Security Project. So they tell you how to test the web application. Okay, so there are top 10 which we will teach you the top 10 vulnerabilities which by default web application security tester has to check for in a particular web application. There are top 10 vulnerabilities there. Mobile testing, how to test a mobile application. Web application security consortium, WASC, is another standard. NIST 800-115 is another standard that tells you the testing guidelines. There is PTES, which stands for Penetration Testing Execution Standard. Alright, so these are some of the testing standards, and as part of the training, we will teach you about OWASP top 10, and the rest testing standards that are there. It's up to you. If you learn, it's a very advantageous thing. However, we are not going to cover that in the training, but it's up to you. If you learn about WASC and all, you will get that on Google. Please make sure you research, and you mention WASC in your resume, you mention PTES in your resume, you mention ISO, you mention ethical hacking, you mention Kali Linux and all the tools that are using in different tools section. So all these things are important. This will give weightage to your resume. Okay, so talking about the testing, there are different types of testings. When you talk, this testing is about the web application security testing and mobile testing and all. Okay, so basically divided into three types, the technical testing. Okay, one is black box testing, okay, white box testing, and gray box testing. So black box testing means the tester has no knowledge about the target. Okay, so he's testing as an attacker. All right, in a white box, the tester has full knowledge about the target, basically testing as a developer, and a gray box has some knowledge about the target. Okay, so knowledge means what type of knowledge? Like for example, in your case, when you are doing the red team assessment, okay, you will be given with the target. That's it. You have to find all the details, like their IP address, the server details, what version, what is running, what is the web page. In some of the cases we will give you the company name. Okay, you have to find threads which that company will have, and for that you have to find their website, their web application, their email ID. All this you have to find. In a white box, the tester will by default have all these details. Okay, and in gray box they will have some details. So when we provide the red team assessment service, it is it becomes more effective, more powerful, and that's why it is gaining more popularity among our clients. And we are able to get more and more clients for this, because we are testing as an attacker, just like our real-time attacker. We are doing the testing, and that's what you would be doing. You would not be given any details. In some of the cases you will be given details, but in most of the cases you will be just given the company name or the target name or the URL. Okay, and you have to do the testing, or the black box testing is what you will be doing. All right, so as a intern you will be with the red team, and there are different teams in cybersecurity. We have already discussed that. All right, like department wise we have discussed. However, there are teams also that are widely known. One is red team. Okay, it's an offensive team. Red team is a offensive team that does offensive testing. This is what you would be doing. Then we have blue team. Blue team is a defensive team, so blue team defends. Okay, and there's a purple team in between. So purple team is a a very advanced team. So red team people, what they do is they perform the attack. Okay, they try to penetrate. Basically VAPT is performed here when you talk about red team. It's a manual testing that is being followed. Okay, and as a blue team, they defend the attack. All right, basically that this team is called a SOC, Security Operations Center. You have a module for this. Okay, and incident management is another team within blue team, you can say. So basically as a blue team, they have to find for any threat. If someone is trying to do an attack, they have to stop that attack. They have to do it live. All right, so that's about blue team. And then we have a purple team, which manages every part of security in an organization. They define the policy, they define the procedure. All right, so a red team has all the technical knowledge, a blue team has a defensive knowledge, and a purple team guy not just has red team knowledge, purple team knowledge, but they also define policies, procedures. So they are at a very advanced level again. Okay, so for a blue team, for a purple team, they need to the candidate needs to have the compliance and the technical both. Just like how, as I said, for a CISO should be knowing on the compliance and technical side of the cyber security. The same way, the purple team person also, it's a again advanced level than the red team. All right, so you're gonna get to learn about both the sides of cyber security here, so that you can plan for purple team in future. Okay, so talking about policies and procedure, they are very important in cyber security, and they play a very important role in cyber security. Okay, in having a good cyber security, if there are no policy, then the company cannot have security. That's how it is. All right, so what is this policy? Policy is basically a high level document. It's a rules or plan of action. Okay, just like your college or your company, if you have when you're studying in college, or if you're studying in college, your college has certain rules for you, like rules for dress, that is dress code, timings, attendance, marks, and no ragging or anti-ragging. You have certain policies. So they tell you what needs to be done when what need should not be done. Okay, so same way, it's policy. And procedure means it defines the way of doing something. Okay, so policy will tell there should be a password protection. Okay, it will just tell that. Procedure will tell what type of password protection should be there, like minimum 8 characters. Okay, there should be a number, it should be alphanumeric. There should be special characters and so on. So this is what procedure will tell. A bit more explanation will be there in procedure. Okay, so talking about a cybersecurity policy, what's a cybersecurity policy? It's a written document in an organization which will outline how to protect the organization from threats, including computer security threats, and how to handle situation when they occur. Okay, so if a company, just like how a college, if a college does not have policy in place for the students, for their timing, dress code, attendance, marks, and all these things, then it will not be called a college at all. They'll not be able to run things properly, right? That's why in an organization, a policy is very important. As a compliance guy, you draft policy first. Okay, in the policy you mention that VAPT should be done, and all these things you mention that. So you use the standard reference to define a policy, and so on. Okay, so that's what a cybersecurity policy does. Please make sure, if you're consulting a company in future, if a company does not have a cybersecurity policy, then you can't do anything there. Okay, it's a must. All right, so there are different policies that are there in cybersecurity. Like we have information security policy, which will tell about how the management should be, different controls basically these, as I said, policies define rules, as I said, but in our cybersecurity terms, it's about controls. Controls means rules, the same thing. Okay, so in the information security policy, there will be controls like for a department, who will be the responsible person, who is the CISO, who is the, how many teams are there, and who is the head of each of the team, and all these things will be defined in the information security policy. Then there is acceptable usage policy. Okay, when an employee joins an organization, they have to accept certain things, that they'll not reveal the company details to outside, and so on. Then we have password policy, to manage the password. Access control policy, which user has what access, how the access should be given. So like, if a new employee joins, and he's required to have access to a particular server room. Okay, so to give that access, it's not just directly given. Okay, the access is given by a particular person who has to approve it, who has to request it. Okay, so there is this certain process that needs to be followed, and that process is defined in the access control policy. Then we have human resource policy, basically, which tells about protecting or implementing controls to protect the human resources. Okay, like before onboarding, while onboarding, after onboarding. Like after onboarding, give them training, give them awareness, sign an acceptable policy from them. Okay, so all these things are written down in the human resource policy. Then we have incident management policy. In case of an incident, in case like a cyber attack, what needs to be done, who should be contacted, who is the responsible person, how to contact, what phone number, what email ID, and what communication medias are there, how do you do that, as a basic thing, what do you do, like we tell in the policy that the employee should unplug the system from the network immediately if he sees any suspicious thing. So these are the things that are written, and then the policy is given to the employee, and then they read through it, and then they sign through it. Okay, physical security policy, backup policy, how the backup should be taken, where the backup is taken, on what occasions the backup are taken, like frequency, daily, weekly, monthly, or how it is taken. So all these controls are defined in the policies. So some of the companies, nowadays, they will have just one policy, that is information security policy. Under that, they will have separate domains. Okay, some of the companies don't follow this, because the policy will become like 100 pages, 200 pages. So they will have different policies for that. The main content of a policy, what it should have is the controls. Okay, because while I was doing auditing for a cooperative bank, which is our client. So I saw that they had policies. I was talking about them because they wanted to check their security thing. So they took our secure up service. Okay, so we have secure up, which by which an organization can upgrade their security. Okay, so that's about secure up framework. It's our own product of Cyber Sapiens. It's a compliance based product. All right, so as part of it, we were validating their policies, and when we do this audit. Okay, we ask certain questions, and all. There is a discussion round. We'll tell you how audit is done in the session. So we asked them about policy, and they said, yeah, we have policies, and every policies we have. So he brought bunch of books. Okay, like this much books he brought, and he kept in front of me. I said, yeah, this is our policy. Okay, so there was policy which were of 300, 400 pages. I was just going through the books, the policies, and I saw that it was all copy paste from Google. Okay, none of the things that was mentioned in the book was being followed, is what I found. And then it was discarded. We came up with the policies, and we told them, boss, policy is basically not definitions, not explanations. It should cover what you have in place, what you want in your organization to be followed. Okay, and we came up with new policies. So that's about cybersecurity policy. Further, we will have sessions for you. Just for your information now at a very high level, what information security policy is and what is the importance of policy. Without policy, an organization cannot have security at all. This one thing keep in mind. Okay. So as a red team, as I said earlier, when you join us as an intern for red team, you'll be working for the targets. Okay. And when you work for the targets, what you have to do is you have to hunt for threats. Okay, you have to find threats. All right, so let's understand certain very important terminologies that you have to understand, very important certain terminologies and certain concepts. Very importantly, vulnerability, threat and risk. Okay, so what is a vulnerability? Vulnerability refers to a loophole or a weakness or weakest point. Okay, we have already discussed this. I showed you an image also. Threat is malicious act or action. Okay, threat means malicious act or actions. Okay, threat is an action. Okay, and risk is the loss or damage or the outcome, you can say as risk. Okay, so example of vulnerability is no security guard, no log, no antivirus. These are example. Threat is robbery, malware attack. Okay, so robbery is an action, malware attack is an action, if you see. So that is threat. And risk is reputational loss or financial loss or damage. Okay, so risk is the outcome. Generally risk is told in terms of reputational loss and financial loss only. Okay, most of the time. All right, so that's vulnerability. Loophole. Threat is an action what an attacker can do. Like if there is no security guard, then the threat is that anyone can and a robber can do robbery, and the risk is financial loss and reputational loss both. Okay, so risk exists if there is a threat and vulnerability. If there is no threat and if there is no vulnerability, then there is no risk. And risk is the function of likelihood and impact. Okay, so further about risk, there is a separate domain in cybersecurity called as risk management, which we will be covering for you. And I'm sure you will not understand now the likelihood and impact and all. However, in the further session when we will take session on risk management, things will get cleared for you. For now, risk means outcome. Okay, the loss, that is the risk. Threat means malicious action. Okay, and there are types of threats. There are two types of threats. One is internal threat and external threat. Very important. Internal threat and external threat. An organization protects itself from internal threat and external threat. What is internal threat? Or example of internal threat is employees. Okay, and external threat example is hackers. And not ethical hackers, but hackers are the external threats. Natural calamities are external threats. Okay, like flood is an external threat. um, Cyclone is a external threat, which comes under the natural calamities. Okay, so these are the types of threats. Next is about authentication. Authentication means validating a user. Okay, validating a user. So you authenticate, right? Before you log into your account, you are authenticated, you are validated. Okay, you're validated to see whether you have, whether it is you or not, right? So authentication methods, there are three types of authentication methods: something you know, something you have, and something you are. Okay, so authentication is something you write in your knowledge section in your resume. Okay, so authentication, what does it mean? It means validating. And how it is done? It is done using three methods: something you know, something you have, and something you are. What do you mean by something you know? Something you know means your user ID, your password. This is something you know. Something you have, your ID card or your OTP. Okay, you get an OTP for your phone. That is something you have. Something you are your biometrics, like your fingerprints, your retina scan, and so on. Okay, so you might have heard about two-factor authentication, right? Or multi-factor authentication. So what is this two-factor authentication? two-factor authentication means using any two of these methods is called as two-factor authentication. Like if the question, if we ask you the question, um, can password and uh, password and user ID be considered as two-factor authentication? The answer is no, because password and user ID is something you know. You should be using password and OTP, that becomes two-factor authentication. Okay, password and biometrics becomes two-factor authentication. All right. So this is about authentication. Next is authorization. Authorization means first you are authenticated. Okay, you are checked whether it is you or not. Like when you are entering the college, you will have a ID card, right? So yes, you are allowed, you are authenticated to get in. Authorization means to have access to certain things. Okay, so it is provided based on your roles and responsibilities. Like you enter the premises, you are authorized, you are authenticated to enter the college, but you are not authorized to enter maybe principal's room, and some areas which are allowed only for the staffs. You are not authorized for that. You are authorized for your classroom, your washroom, and certain library. Okay, to your classroom only you are authorized. You are not authorized to enter anyone else classroom, especially if there is a class going on, right? So authorization. Okay, so when you are logging into your Facebook account, or when you're logging into certain accounts, you are first validated with your credentials that you give. Okay, and then you are given the rights there. Okay, so not every rights are given for you, only certain rights are given as to what you can do there. Okay, so that's about authorization, authentication, authorization. And third one is accountability. Accountability means ownership or logging what you have done, what are the activities that you have done. That is accountability. Like you log in. Okay, you delete some files and then you log out. Okay, so to trace back, accountability is used. What time the user logged in, what time he deleted, what did he do, all these things comes under accountability. Okay, so these three terms very important: authentication, authorization, and accountability. All right. Authentication, please make sure you mention it in your resume, because that will give a weightage in the knowledge section. Okay, so coming back to the red team assessment, how is the red team assessment done? So first the target will be given for you. When the target is given, you have to do information gathering. So this is basically part of ethical hacking only. Okay, even for VAPT also, the process or the method of ethical hacking is used. Okay, so ethical hacking is base for every technical testing that is done. Okay, so first when a target is given, you have to do information gathering, and this is very important, because many a times assessors fail to do information gathering properly. Okay, if you do not do information gathering properly, then further you will not be able to do exploits, or further attacks you cannot perform, because you will not have certain information and you will lag behind. Again, you will have to start from the scratch. So we will focus more on information gathering initially itself, and we will tell you also to focus more on information gathering, because that is a very important part. Then you do vulnerability analysis, that is you find vulnerabilities. Okay, so you find information, then you find vulnerabilities in it, in the pages and applications, with a manual approach, not automated tools, as I said. Okay, manual approach only needs to be followed. You do penetration testing, but before doing penetration testing, you have to inform us. Okay, because you're not supposed to do the exploitation part, right? So you have to inform us. We will give you the confirmation whether you can do exploitation, whether you can do penetration testing or not, and then you can go. Because in some of the cases we have seen, one of the case candidate, he performed DOS attack just to check. He found a vulnerability, he wanted to confirm it, and he exploited and he did a DOS attack. The DOS attack that he did was very, the impact was very high, and the client application was done, was down for around 14 hours or something. Okay, and we had to give a explanation, and also make sure you don't get into the penetration testing or exploitation part. Next is reporting or documentation. Please make sure, please understand that documentation is very important. Okay, if you do not do the document, and documentation doesn't just mean copy paste and writing something. There are a lot more things like formatting, the presentation thing in the documentation. Lot of things are there in the documentation that you have to take care of, and we will slowly teach you that. Okay, so once you report it to us, we report it to the client, and you might have to give a client presentation also, where you explain the client, you tell the client what is the vulnerability, how you have done it, you show it to the client live at that moment. Okay, so in order for us to put you in front of the client, we have to ensure that your communication, your English, your grammar, your presentation, all of this is good. So we will give you opportunity to enhance your presentation skills. So we will tell you to take certain sessions and all. Okay, so you will also have to take sessions for the interns, candidates, and for your colleagues and others as well. And we will also validate that, and we will give you feedback so that you improvise yourself. And this is very important part. Please remember, if you are able to find the vulnerability, and if you are not able to show the vulnerability to the client and tell the client, then what is the use of finding the vulnerability? So this is again a very important part, and we will guide you, and we will try to make you perfect in this. Okay, so as I said, when the target is given, first thing is understand the target. Okay, gather as much as information as possible, like what is the target, what does the target do. This is again very basic thing. If you don't know what the target does, you will not understand what type of data they'll deal with, and then you cannot give the security accordingly. Okay, because if there is nothing to protect, then the security will be very less. Okay, if the data is very critical, then only you go with lot more security there. So it depends on what you are protecting. So what does the target do, why is the target used, what type of work it does, and so on. Okay, so you basically have to gather information from the target, nothing else. Okay, you have to gather as much information as possible from the target. And talking about the information, there are different classification of information which you have to understand. Again, very important, please add this also in your resume, information classification. So the classification goes like public, internal, confidential, or restricted use. This is not the one which every companies use. Again, okay, different companies use different classification schema. Some use public, internal, sensitive, highly sensitive. Some use public, internal, confidential, sensitive. It depends by company to company, because there is nothing like mandatory thing that this is what needs to be used, but it depends on the level. Okay, so public information means which is least restrictive. You don't need to protect it. It is meant for the public, like address, website name, um, or maybe CEO details, founder details, location details. These are all public information. Don't need to protect them. Internal is for the internal employees of the organization, like Cyber Sapiens. Okay, you are part of you are an intern now. Some of our policies, some of our client details are internal information. You cannot be revealing the details to anyone outside. Okay, so that is internal to the employees of that particular organization. Okay, you need to implement control here, because it is restricted. It is restricted. It should not go beyond the internal network there. Then you have confidential. Furthermore, like for a particular project, okay, like we give you a target, you work on a target, that target information you are not giving it to someone else. Okay, that is confidential, because that you are working for that particular project, and that project is having certain valuable information. You are not going to reveal that to anyone. Okay, so that is confidential, which is known to only certain group of people, like project managers or certain project people only know it. Then is the next level, which is restricted use or highly sensitive or sensitive kind of thing, which is level 4. Okay, the next level, which is again more secure, needs more security, like budget, how much revenue is generated from a particular project, that is not known to everyone in the project team. Okay, that is only known to the project manager. He only knows how much the company is earning from that particular project, but you will not be told for that. Okay, so when you are also doing the information, you will also come across lot of information, like when you are doing web application security, you find the server, what server the website is using and what version it is using. That is internal information, that is a confidential information. All right, so majorly here, when we are dealing with, when you are doing red team assessment, you categorize them into two things: public information and non-public information. Non-public information includes all of this. Okay, because as an outsider, we will not be able to define whether something is internal or confidential. That is up to the company. That is why we are putting all these thing under one, which is non-public. Okay, public and non-public. Non-public includes anything which is internal of the company, okay, which no one outside should be knowing. Okay, so as an organization, when an organization is given to, when a company is given to you, you try to find their services history, employees, websites, subdomains, locations, hyperlinks, email IDs, their videos. You watch their videos and see whether there are any loopholes there, images, website pages, social media, okay, establishment. So you basically try to find the entry points. Okay, like if we tell you there is a building, okay, and you have to get into the building, you have to rob that building. Okay, so you try to find the entry points from where you can get in. Maybe you will find the back door, maybe you will find a tree that is very close to the building, and you can get into inside that building through that tree. Okay, because there is a security guard at the entrance, and the door is locked at the back end, so you cannot get in from the entrance. So you try to use that help of the tree, or you climb the thing and you get in from the roof because the roof is open. All right, so you try to find the entry points basically. Okay, when you're doing the information, you do the you find the entry points. Okay, so this is how the red team assessment is done, and slowly you will get used to it. If you are understanding what I'm saying, it's very good. However, if you're not understanding, in very simple terms, it's like with the same example that I said, you will give you a building, and you have to find the loopholes in the building from where you can get in. Okay, that's how it is. So once you get in, you find confidential things in them, confidential assets in them. Maybe you find documents, maybe you find some valuable computers and all. Same way, when a website is given, you find data in them. Okay, you find how much harmful it is. You find different vulnerabilities and all. So all the 30 plus vulnerabilities will be taught to you, and you implement that. So this is how the red team assessment will be done. Okay, next is to understand the different types of testing that are performed in cybersecurity. There are different types of testing that are done. Okay, this is not the testing which we discussed, that is black box, white box, and gray box. Okay, that is different. That comes under VAPT or red team assessment. Okay, so VAPT, red team assessment, these are the types of testing. Okay, like we have vulnerability assessment, penetration testing, auditing. Okay, code reviews, red team assessment. These are the types of testing. Red team assessment I have already discussed just now, and further guidance will be given to you once you join. Let's take a look at the code reviews. Code review is a type of testing. Okay, so cybersecurity is very big. All right, don't think that it's only about ethical hacking and all. It's very vast. Okay, so there is something called as code review. What is this code reviews? Code review means when a code is being developed. Okay, when a developer is developing the code, he should follow certain things, right? And whether he has followed those things or not is needs to be checked, and this is called as code review. Okay, which comes under SDLC, which stands for Secure Code Development Lifecycle. SDLC is called as Secure Code SD Secure Development Life Cycle. Okay, SDLC, sorry, Secure Development Life Cycle. Yeah, Secure Development Life Cycle. Okay, so that is SDLC, under which we have code review. So there is basically a checklist that is followed. Okay, like does the code respect the project coding conventions? Are the variables declarations properly done, commented? Are all functions, methods and classes documented? Are all the functions, methods? So all this checklist is there, and has a tester, has a code reviewer. Okay, tester is different, code reviewer is different. Again, please understand this. Tester is someone who tests the web application, whether, and it does the functionality. Okay, it tests the functionality. Secure code reviewer tests the functionality from the bug perspective or vulnerability perspective or from a security perspective. Okay, so are errors handled properly? Are the error messages shown properly? Comment blocks are, properly sized or not, and they're commented or not. So these are the things that needs to be checked. And to do this, to perform code reviews, there are tools used. Okay, these are some of the tools that are mentioned here. You can further do research about these tools, and you can see how these tools work. Some of them are open source, so you can use it. If you already know about development and coding, it will be very helpful for you. And otherwise also, it's a very important thing to mention a code review tool, because when you're working on web application security, many companies expect you to be knowing about code reviews and tools for code reviews and all that. Okay, so at a very high level, this is about code reviews. Further, you have to do research on various code review based tools and prepare report in any one of the tool. Okay, so this will be a task. This is the task that is given for you. Please make sure you follow it. And one more thing, whenever you are working on the task and whenever you are working on any of the target or anything, if you come across any questions, any doubts, any clarifications, please make a note of it and keep, so that you get it clarified. Okay, so that you get it clarified once we start with your internship, or in between also, before we start with the internship also. If you want to clarify any of the doubts, any things, please feel free to connect with Mr. Iqbal and get things clarified. All right, so that's about the code review. Okay, next type of testing is audit. Okay, auditing basically means verification, checking. Okay, so we validate, we check. Okay, in your college you might have heard NAC audit used to come. Okay, or during your exams, invigilator used to come. So they used to come to audit, to check whether students are writing exams properly or not, whether there is a inspector, faculty there or not. So this is basically audit. Auditing means checking. Okay, and how is auditing performed? Auditing is performed using checklist. It's very simple. Okay, so what is the checklist, and how will one do the audit? They will check for the controls. Okay, so control effectiveness is done. Again, about auditing, you will be taught about auditing in the training. You have a separate session. Okay, we will tell you how exactly and what type of controls and how do you check the controls. All of them will be done at a high level, like talking about physical security domain and human resource security domain. There are controls here. So are CCTV cameras in place at every required point? So this is what these are required from ISO. Okay, so you validate. And how do you validate? You go to the physical location, you watch, whether CCTV cameras are installed or not. Right, so in one of the case, while I was doing an audit as part of the SecureUp, again for a different cooperative bank, it was with respect to CCTV camera, because we were doing the RBI framework for the cooperative banks. We were implementing the RBI's framework there. So when the CCTV camera part came, he said, hey, yeah, we have CCTV camera and all. I went to validate, and I saw that CCTV cameras are there everywhere. There's one room where there is a server room. Okay, and beside the server room there is kind of a wall. All right, and the CCTV camera that they have placed is there, and it is capturing the area. However, there is a blind spot there, so anyone can enter the server room, because at the entrance of the server room there was no CCTV camera. However, there was CCTV camera everywhere, but at the entrance, so that was the blank spot. And even inside of the CCTV server room also, there was no CCTV camera. Okay, so we suggested, boss, see, this will not work out, though you have CCTV camera, but the placement is not good. Okay, so ISO nor PCI will not tell you which points there should be CCTV cameras. It's your thinking, it's your logical understanding, and your capability to find out the places and implement it at that place. Is there an alarm for the biometric door? So while I worked for Infosys, this particular thing, we had to check. And how we check the alarm for biometrics. So we used to go there and try with our fingerprint whether it is working or not. Okay, if I try with my fingerprint, because I'm not authorized, okay, I should not be authenticated. So if someone else does that, if some non-authenticated person tries to put the fingerprint, then it should ring an alarm. Okay, if the alarm is ringing, it's working fine, the control is implemented properly. Okay, is there a visitor logbook? So there is a visitor logbook that should be there. So we validate that. Talking about human resource security, our background checks performed for all the employees. So for that, you ask for the background verification report. Our employees provided with security training, so you ask for photos or signature of the participants. So these are the things about checklist, and you validate them. Okay, you validate them. Why audits are performed? Basically to find the gaps. Okay, basically you have a policy in place, right? Every company will have a policy in place. So all the controls that are mentioned in the policy, are they followed or not, is needs to be checked, and this checking is called as auditing. Okay, so generally audits are performed as per the policy or as per a particular standard. Okay, that's how it is performed. And there are two kinds of audit. One is internal audit done by the internal employee, and there is external audit done by an external third party. Okay, so further about the audit, how it is done and all, will be covered in the audit module. Okay, next is vulnerability assessment and penetration testing. So the difference with two is that vulnerability assessment is finding vulnerabilities, and penetration testing is exploiting the vulnerability. Very important from interview point of view, career point of view, this question will be asked. Okay, so mention about IT audit in your resume, mention about code review in your image resume, mention about penetration testing, VAPT in your resume, you will get a good weightage. And there will be such lot more things will be covered for you in the sessions, which you can add in your resume, and that will give a weightage for you, and this is what will give you a job. Okay, just because you have done the training, no one will give you a job, because you have added those things in your resume, because you know these concepts. This is what will give you a job. Please understand this. Okay, so VA and PT, vulnerability assessment, means finding the vulnerabilities. Okay, and penetration testing means exploiting the identified vulnerabilities. Okay, so penetration testing, you give them actual facts, and vulnerability assessment, you give them possibilities. Like first, vulnerability assessment is performed, no client will tell you directly come and exploit. Okay, because it's like performing an attack only. So client will tell first do the VA. So you find vulnerability, you report it to the client, and out, like you find maybe 10 vulnerabilities, where you say these are the chances, there are chances that these things can happen. So out of 10, client will say, okay, these 5 you show it to me. So you exploit it, and you come back and you tell, see here, I told that we can, this vulnerability is there, and because of this vulnerability we can fetch all the database, you can steal the database. See this is the screenshot, I am able to get the database, and this is the screenshot of the database. So we come up with the actual facts. Okay, so this is the difference with VA and PT. VA only finding, identifying vulnerabilities, PT is exploiting the identified vulnerabilities. That is the difference. So there is internal VAPT done and external VAPT done. Internal means by the internal, from the internal network. External means from outside or an external party. Okay, so this is generally called as VAPT only. So don't put it like different thing like VA and PT. VAPT is usually used in one, and the process of VAPT is again the steps of ethical hacking itself. However, a few additional things are there, like the first thing is scoping. Okay, scoping means what you are actually what are the devices or machines that you are going to work on. Okay, so you first do the scoping. You decide what machines, what IPs needs to be tested. Then you take approvals, because you have to take approvals. The client has to give you approval. Sometimes client will tell to perform VA at an odd time, like night time. Okay, if it is a e-commerce website and all, they'll tell you to do the VAPT at maybe 3 o'clock or 4 o'clock, because that's a time where they'll not be having any customers, and if anything happens, it will not have an impact on their business. That's one thing. And secondly, when you're doing VAPT, you send in lot of traffic, so a lot of traffic gets generated, and it might result in slowing down the server, or a DOS attack kind of thing. So when the approvals are given, you are told what time you have to do, and all sort of things. So approvals are taken, you validate the access, you see whether you have access or not. If you do not have access, then you take access, you connect through VPN and all that. Next is information gathering. So here you start with ethical hacking process. So you gather information, you perform the scan, manual or automated. Most of the time VAPT means automated only, and not manual. However, it depends. Again, it depends. Okay, I can't say that every time it is manual only, or every time it is automated only, but most of the time it is automated tools. Okay, you perform and VAPT. That is why we are not giving you internship on VAPT. We are giving you internship on red team, because red teaming is at a very advanced level, because you only do manual testing. Okay, so once you perform the scan, then you do the report, you document. Okay, you do the reporting, and then you remediate. Okay, you give the remediation plan, you remediate, and you do a rescan of it, and you validate. Okay, same way, if you look at the process for PT, that is penetration testing, you have scoping, that is you decide the machines, you take approvals, you validate the access. Okay, and you do the information gathering, you perform the test, you exploit the vulnerability here. Okay, you exploit the vulnerability, you don't do the scanning, because scanning of the vulnerability is already done. So you exploit the vulnerability here, you report it to the client, you remediate, you rescan. So yeah, this is how the process. And if you look at here, the only difference is there is no exploitation, rest of the things are same. Okay, so this is the difference with VA and PT. So what's the benefit of VAPT? The benefits of VAPT is it will help you understand loopholes or errors that can lead to major cyber attacks. VAPT gives a more detailed view of the threats that your network or application is facing. It helps enterprises to protect their data and systems from malicious attacks. Okay, VAPT is important to accomplish compliance standards. Compliance standard means PCI, ISO, HIPAA, all these standards that are there. They tell that mandatorily you have to perform VAPT. Like PCI DSS tells every quarterly. So for a year, every four times in a year, Paytm has to do VAPT. Okay, some companies do it monthly, some companies do it quarterly, but they follow the compliance requirement or the standard as well. So in their policy, as per the standard, if it is Paytm will have a VAPT policy where they'll say every 3 months they have to do the VAPT. Okay, protects your business from data loss and unauthorized access. Okay, from cyber attacks, it protects you. It will help you in protecting your data from insider and outside threats, or internal and external threats that we discussed. Okay, safeguards the business from loss of reputation and money, that is a risk. So these are some of the benefits of VAPT. Okay, nowadays companies are moving from VAPT to red team assessments. A red team assessment as of now is not a requirement of compliance. However, in PCI it's a requirement. RBI it's a requirement that um, red team assessment should be done. So red team assessment is more and more getting more popularity because of its quality. Okay, so the next thing is about the task that will be given here, which is to research on OWASP top 10. However, we will take sessions for you on OWASP top 10, but we want to make sure that you prepare, and by doing the research you will understand about these concepts. And this is the task for you here, to research on various top 10 and prepare a report of the same. Okay, so here um, Yes. So here I have a sample report for you. This is a confidential report. However, for education purpose, I'm sharing it. This is a web application and penetration testing. That's VAPT or WAPT. Also, it is called WAPT, means web application penetration testing, which is the same VAPT, WAPT. They are the same. So we have assessment date from to that there's the table of contents here, okay, which tells the vulnerabilities, and this is the initial thing here. Um, so you have the document details, document title, ID, version, last edit date, and the document submission details, to whom it was submitted, to the designation, this is of the client details, okay. um, Again here distribution list, and then we have a notice that we put, okay. Copyright issues, trademarks, contact details, management summary, scope of the work. As I said, we do the scoping. That is the first thing. So which applications or which of the URLs are we going to test is what is mentioned here in the scope of work. Type of assessment, you can see it is gray box testing. So some of the information was given to us, so it was gray box, and it is called as penetration testing also. Then we have our approach here: understand scope, broad scans, targeted scans, business test cases, identify attack surface, VA, exploit vulnerabilities, identify the impact, provide detailed recommendations, publish report, and conduct debrief. So this is something what we follow, okay. Every company will have their own process defined. So this is for VAPT, this is not for red team. Red team I have already shown, okay. So this is for VAPT, and don't go with the common stringent thing that this is how it will be. It will be different for different companies. However, things will be common, like scope, understanding the scope, scanning, exploiting, documenting, okay. This will be there. Some things will be additional. However, whatever you do will be the same, but the points and mentioning will be different here, okay. Then the frameworks that we have followed, the standards, methodologies that we have used, that is OWASP, WASC, open source security testing methodology manual, OSST/MM. So these are the methodologies or the standards that we have followed. So please make sure you go through this because OS we are going to cover for you, okay. So summary of findings, we can see that there are nearly about 18 findings with the criticality here: critical, high, medium, low. Again, some companies use 4, some companies use 3, that is low, medium, high. Some use 4, low, medium, high, critical. Again, it depends, okay. So these are the vulnerabilities that we have identified here, and again the graphical representation. So affected URL, criticality is severity is critical. So here we say that we are telling you them what was the issue, okay, and then we are attaching the screenshot or the POC, that is proof of concept, by telling them go to the URL, do this, do that, okay. And we tell them that the data was accessible here, and so on. So what is the impact, what is the recommendation, okay. To authenticate users is what it is telling. So we have already just discussed about what is authentication, very important concept. Again, blind SQL injection was a vulnerability. What was the thing, analysis of that, how did we find it, and what is the impact, and what is the recommendation, reference also we give sometimes, okay. So this is how the VAPT looks like. However, when you're talking about red team assessment, there is nothing particular template as such that we will give you. You have to come up with your own template, and then we will add on for it, okay. The one which we will be sending to the client, we have a template for that, but your submission to us at the initial stage, there will be no template, because we are preparing you for that from the scratch, so that you when you join an organization tomorrow, when they will have their different format, their own format, you get used to that format also. That's one thing. Second thing is, sometimes, okay, because cybersecurity is just been started in a lot of companies, so you might be in a startup company or a company where they are starting this process newly, so you might have to come up with the template, you might have to design a template for them. All right, so for that reason we are not keeping a particular viewpoint of yours, we are keeping it open so that you are capable of coming up with your own template with your own content. However, when you come up with us, we will then guide you. This is how it works. Okay, we expect you to come to us and then we guide you, nor we tell you, you copy paste and then you come to us. It doesn't make sense. This is not how the way we are providing the training. Our training is completely different and unique. Okay, so that's it for the session here, and see you in the next session. Thank you. Bye.